We will now call the meeting of the Waco NPO Policy Board, March 17, 2022 to order at 2:03 p.m. NPO staff is this meeting posted. Yes. And are there councils that should be called into session? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Okay, we'll call the city.
I will now call the city council into session here around 2 o'clock at the South Waco Community Center.
Great. Before we can start here, I just want to, there's some new people on the board. I just want to kind of go around, and I won't ask everybody to introduce themselves, but I'll go and just kind of do a little bit of a roll call and with the title, just so everybody knows who everybody is. I think everybody kind of knows, but I'll just go right down the alphabetical list. Council member from City of Waco, Andrea Bearfield. City representative engineer from Walker and Associates, Jacob Bell, right over there. City manager from the City of Lacey Lakeview, Keith Bond, right, it's right in front. City council member, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Waco, Josh Borderoux, just called the meeting order. Thanks. The mayor of the City of Robinson, Bert Echterling. Not see Bert. The deputy city manager from the City of Waco, Deidre Emerson, right over here. The city manager from the City of McGregor, Kevin Evans. He's not here today. America's judge. Scott. Are you here? Scott. Yes. A council member from the City of Belmead, Travis Gibson. Travis is not here today. Let's see. The Plan Commission representative and chair from the City of Waco, Ross Harris, right here. I'm here today, the city councilman from the City of Waco. The mayor of the City of Ross, Jim Jaska. I don't see Mayor Jaska. McLennan County Commissioner from my precinct, Commissioner Jones, Will Jones, is here today. The mayor from the City of Waco, Dylan Meek, is absent this afternoon. City manager from the City of Woodway, Sean O'Bray. Sean is not here today, okay. And district engineer from TxDOT, the Waco district, Mr. Stan Switek is over here. And city manager from the City of Hewitt, Bo Thomas, right over here. All right, thanks everybody for being here. And I just want to say this is such a great board of judges and mayors and councilmen on here, and I'm honored to serve as a chairman this year, and I appreciate all you giving your time and talents to this board. So without further ado, we'll get moving on here. The first item is the public hearing. The public can speak on any discussion or action item on the agenda at this time. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the NPO Policy Board on any agenda item. Please complete the speaker's registration card with NPO staff. And that, we have those in the back there. Speakers will be allotted one presentation at the beginning of the agenda for each agenda item the speaker wishes to address. Please note each action item will have a separate public hearing later in the agenda. Speakers have the option of addressing the board at either time, but you will only be allowed one opportunity to address the board per agenda item. For agenda items not on today's meeting, there's a separate hearing of visitors at the end of the meeting. So staff, do we have any registered speakers? We do not. So we do have a full agenda today. We've got 2 action items up front, and then 5 discussion items, the construction update, and a director's report. So we'll get going here. The first item is the approval of the minutes of February 17, 2022 NPO Policy Board meeting. A copy of the minutes was provided in your meeting packet. Are there any corrections to the minutes as submitted? There being none, they will be approved as presented. So we'll go to item number 4, the first action item. Consideration and action regarding approval of resolution 2022-5, establishment of bylaws for the Waco NPO Technical Advisory Committee. Mukesh.
Thank you, Councilman Holmes. So we drafted these bylaws essentially to formalize the role that the Technical Advisory Committee plays. in its recommendations to the policy board, as well as considerations and deliberations of all the projects that have been discussed, as well as the entire planning process that we engage in at the NPO level. This is a fairly standard procedure. Most NPO tax typically do have bylaws with formality to them. So today, the first step is to establish the bylaw itself, which have gone through about 4 or 5 rounds of revisions based on comments received from the policy board, as well as the technical advisory committee as it stands today. So today we established the bylaws, and at the next meeting after the establishment of the bylaws, the TAC will elect a chair and a vice chair, and then in subsequent policy board meeting, the chair of the TAC will also have an agenda item in which they will give an update or and the items that were discussed at the TAC meeting. So the purpose of the TAC bylaws are essentially to formalize the committee structure, as well as provide rules and framework to guide operations and activities. At the same time, the most important role that TAC plays is in making sure that the deliberate discussions that occur, they reach the policy board in their recommendation format. So these are some of the development timeline. And so today, if there are questions or comments, we can discuss it further. If not, we'll be ready to.
Are there any questions on the first action item? I'll just say that the technical advisory committee currently doesn't have any bylaws, so I think it was important for us to establish those. And we're kind of shaping up our policies and procedures as we get into this prospective TMA transportation management area status. And I think Mukesh is doing a good job of kind of crossing some of the T's and dotting all the I's on all of our policy and procedure. I appreciate everybody's technical and institutional knowledge already on that committee. And TxDOT and Stan, you guys have been integral in keeping that thing informed. And I think for the most part, we matched off roles with folks that are already on there. So I'm supportive of the bylaws as drafted. So are there any other questions of staff?
Chairman Holmes, I wondered if, because this is our first instituted set of bylaws, I understand that the review is a minimum of every 10 years. However, I'm trying to see it as we go along. We see some things needs to shift or change. Is it just kind of like making a regular change in the amendment and just to amend the bylaws before the 10-year time?
Yes, so all of the bylaws can be amended at the discretion of the policy board.
Thanks, Andrea. Any other questions? If there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve, or I'll entertain a motion on the whole issue.
So moved.
Josh Bordery has made a motion, and Andre Bearfield has seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. That motion passes. On to the second action item, item number 5 on our agenda, consideration and action regarding approval of resolution 2022-6, adoption of amendment 1 to the fiscal year 2022-2023 Unified Planning Work Program. Mukesh.
Chair, Chelsea has a presentation regarding the amendment 1.
Yeah, you can move to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to move pretty quickly because, as Councilman Holmes said, we have a pretty full agenda. So we'll have time for discussion and questions at the end of each section of this presentation. So as a reminder, the UPWP is our operating budget. It details how we're going to spend the federal transportation dollars, like highway and transit planning funds that we receive. And then the UPWP is broken down into tasks that talks about all of our work that we are going to accomplish in those 2 years and the budget associated with those tasks. So this is amendment number 1. And in amendment number 1, we're proposing 2 changes. The first change is to allow us to use consultants to complete or help us assist us with routine tasks. So there are 4 tasks, for example, administration and management, data development and maintenance, short-range planning, and long-range planning. So these are kind of our routine tasks where we could use some help sometimes with hiring a consultant. Currently, the way our UPWP is written, we can only use consultants for our special studies, and that's in task 5. The other change is simply an update to our expected work product under task 1, and that is to account for the fact that we are convening the strategic planning work group, and we'll have a work product that comes out of that. So amendment 1, because it doesn't add a task or delete a task or change the budget, we didn't have to have a separate public comment period according to our public participation plan. So the public will have an opportunity to comment today during the hearing, which is going to immediately follow this staff presentation for this amendment 1. So moving on from that, happy to take any questions on those 2 changes. And I think there might have been some comments about the language for.
So at this time, we can probably bring up the slight changes.
Yeah, first of all, are there any questions of staff on the presentation? I just had one comment, and anytime, I guess it's my private sector experience, anytime I see consultants, I think, you know, a lot of money and not a lot of benefit, but I think that we, in this case, the way it's used and not necessarily defined. And needed. Okay. I'm sorry, Jacob. I apologize. Anyway, all right. See, that's the private sector. That's about public service. I very much appreciate the work of everybody. Sincerely, also. But there was one little change I wanted to make that kind of put how did I worded that sentence?
Yeah, so instead of saying that the MPO may use the consultants to complete a task, Councilman Holmes suggested that we add the language that MPO may use consultants to assist in completing a task, which absolutely makes sense.
It's just fundamentally, I don't like dumping something on the consultant. The consultant should help us and we should complete the task. So I think we have that change in there, right?
I think we would have to include that as part of the action because
So
with that revised language.
Okay. Okay, and again, just one of the things is getting ready for TMA. We're trying to get all this just really screwed down and tightened up, all the language. And I think, again, Mukesh and Chelsea and Annette are doing a great job here. Any other questions on that? I'll entertain a motion on this issue, and I guess unless somebody else wants to make a motion, I'll make a motion that we approve the language as presented with the addition of the consultant
Assist.
language that I suggested.
Yes.
So I'll move for that. Holmes moving, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Deidre Emerson. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes. Next item is item 6, review and discussion regarding proposed amendment 2 to the fiscal year 2022-2023 Unified Planning Work Program, UPW. Mukesh.
Okay, so I'll say before we get started, the reason why we separated these and have amendment 1 and amendment 2 is because of the timeline. Amendment 1, we were able to move forward with that on a streamlined timeline, and we needed that because we do need some assistance from consultants to help us complete our tasks. Amendment 2, you'll see, does require a public comment period, so that's why we did it that way. So amendment 2, we're going to do 2 things that include a budget change. So the first one is the fixed route realignment study that we've been working on with our partners at Waco Transit. We initially thought that we would spend some of that money in fiscal year 21. What actually happened is we simply didn't get the consultant billings until fiscal year 22 started. So we're moving that unexpended dollars over into 22. The overall study budget does not change. It's still what you approved last year at $300,000. That's $112,000 approximately of transportation planning funds, about $150,000 of 5307 funds, as well as local funds, about $37,000 or $500. So that overall budget remains the same. All we're doing is saying all of it's going to be expended in this fiscal year 22. The next change is adding a budget to help us hire some summer interns, and we're proposing $48,000. We're hoping to hire 3 interns, a design and visual communications one, GIS and data analysis, and urban planning. And this dollar amount, the 48,000, includes a contingency because if we find someone that we really like and they have availability, it would be nice to keep them on for a little bit longer. So that's why we added that contingency to the budget. The budget is evenly distributed between the 3 tasks that they would be helping with. So that's data development and maintenance, and short range and long range planning. So because both of these proposed changes revise the budget and it's more than $25,000, it does require a public comment period. So that's going to start on April 8th. It'll go through May 8th. We'll have 2 public informational meetings on April 12th, coming to the TAC for the recommendation at their May meeting, and then back to the policy board on May 19th. There's an asterisk there. That asterisk simply says that technically we only need to have 1 meeting and technically we only need a 10-day public comment period. But as you'll see, as we go through this agenda, we have several plan amendments and we have the TIP coming through, and it just is going to keep it simple if we keep it all on the same schedule. So that's what that asterisk is there for. We're happy to take any questions or discussion. Again, this is not an action item for today, just simply saying that we're going to be taking this out for public review. And I believe you did have this in your packet with the changes in tracked changes.
Yeah, so any questions with Chelsea on this? It's basically, to me, just shorthanding it, it's a carryover that realignment study budget into this year, 300,000. So it's not like that new 300,000 in our budget. And the other is just the latitude to get some interns in, 3 interns ideally for 3 different very specific initiatives, which I think is an efficient way to do it, and it makes a lot of sense. With the turnover we've had with Chris leaving and Chelsea's departure as well, I think it makes sense to get some interns in here to help clean some of that up. So I'm supportive of this initiative.
Are we contemplating having interns every summer, or is that be an as needed year by year assessment?
At this point in time, we think it will be beneficial to have it on a regular basis because we're trying to establish some formal relationships with some of the universities locally, as well as other universities that have urban planning and architecture, landscape architecture, engineering programs. And so hopefully we can formalize some of these relationships so that we have them on a regular basis.
But the amendment will end up voting all be for 1 fiscal year only.
This is only for this summer, yes.
Any other questions? We'll move on to the next item number 7, review and discussion regarding proposed amendments to the MPO's public participation plan, the PPP.
Okay, so the public participation plan is one of our guiding documents. It's really important to our organization. It's federally required. It outlines our entire process for how we're going to include the public in our transportation planning process, and identifies the minimum efforts that we'll take. And our PPP was adopted in November of 2020. So some of these changes are going to seem pretty detailed and simple, but again, because it is one of our guiding documents and it's really important to be transparent about this, that's why we're talking about this here today. So what I'm going to do is provide you just a couple of examples of the types of changes that we're proposing to make. Again, the draft document with the tracked changes is available in your meeting packet if you want to go through the details and see all of the exact changes that we're suggesting. So one thing that we're doing is we're adding an option for routine actions. There are currently 2 types of actions that the policy board can take. Major, which is typically adoption of a new plan, with the exception of this, the public participation plan. Any change to that is a major action as required by federal regulations. And then we have minor actions, which are typically amendments. Also, those performance targets that we adopt every year, those are also minor changes or minor actions, I'm sorry. But we're also adding a new column for routine actions because we realize there are some things that we do that really don't fit under either category, and we wanted the option that was clearly spelled out. So one example is sometimes we'll ask the policy board to do a support letter. For example, I believe last year there was a TxDOT grant or study that they were trying to do, and this policy board was asked to write a support letter for that. Another example is a small change to the UWP. So that's an example of the type of change that we're making. So in this page, you'll just see that I had to add a routine action to the approval process, and then it's clearly shown in our chart. Again, there are several other changes. We can move on to the next slide. Here's a laundry list of some of the minor changes that were made as part of this amendment, like adding our latest performance targets, updating our list of target audiences, updating our meeting frequency with the latest information. So again, if you're interested in those details, that information is in your meeting packet and it's available on our website. And then we will also be having the public comment period. So it's going to overlap as much as possible with our other public comment periods, starting on April 8th with the 2 meetings on April 12th. But because this requires an extended comment period, which is again regulated by the federal regulations, it's a 45-day comment period. So that's going to go until June 2nd. So it won't come to the TAC or to you for adoption until June or maybe later, depending on what the summer meeting schedule looks like. So happy to take any questions on this plan.
Questions of Chelsea on this issue? But just my comments are, I think it actually, when I first read it, particularly the 25,000, not to get the weeds on it, but I read it backwards, but actually we're creating more control, and better control, more clarity in the control and some transparency there.
Yeah, one of the drivers for this change was when Mukesh came on board and he was trying to understand the table. And I'm like, if it's taking you more than 30 seconds to understand this table, like there's something that we gotta fix. So that was part of the driver for this.
So I appreciate the work that we're doing to, again, clean some of this stuff up. Any other questions on this item? Thank you, Chelsea. We'll go to the next item, which is number 8. Review discussion regarding the fiscal year 2023 and 2026 transportation improvement program. TIP.
So one of the core functions of an MPO is to develop a short-range transportation improvement program to identify transportation improvement projects and strategies that the MPO will pursue over the next 4 years to achieve the region's performance goals and targets. And these are drawn from the investment priorities in the long-range development plan, or the MTP. See where we are on the process chart here, the planning process. And for the benefit of some of the guests that we have here today, I'm just going to take 1 second to clarify one thing. So governments generate transportation funds from a number of sources: sales taxes, tolls, bonds, fuel excise taxes. That's just a couple of things. And then funding the MPO, the Waco MPO receives is primarily federal and is appropriated by Congress, but for the federal aid, highway, and federal aid and federal transit programs. And these funds are passed through TxDOT, and then TxDOT decides which mix of funds is best suited to carry out particular projects. And then when we refer to TxDOT's 12 funding categories, like category 2U or category 8, we're referring to TxDOT's funding mix categorization. And I think you've seen us give you that chart before, and if you want to see that later after the presentation, I can show that to you. So as funding becomes available, the MPO, in consultation with their TxDOT district, programs the desired improvement projects and strategies which can be ready for implementation during that 4-year timeframe. So to be included in the TIP, all projects must be identified in the 2045 Waco Metropolitan Transportation Plan. All projects have to have a commitment for 100% of the necessary funding during that TIP timeframe. And the right-of-way projects must have necessary engineering studies complete. Construction projects have to have right-of-way acquisition in progress and engineering studies complete. And transit projects have to have identified funding. And in our region, this is usually through formula grants. So why are we doing a new TIP if the current TIP covers fiscal years 21 through 2024? Well, in Texas, this overlap is required by state statute. In effect, MPOs in Texas prepare a new TIP every 2 years. So this overlap forces a review of projects and allows changes to projects to be captured. So for instance, delays in construction or changes in scope of work or project limits cost changes. This also allows work that's underway or completed to be removed from the tip more often, which makes for a more up-to-date document that's more reflective of board intent. So for our new tip, work completed in fiscal year 2021 and work program for fiscal year 2022 will not be included. So projects program for fiscal years 2023 and 2024 will be carried forward into the new tip, and then priorities from the MTP can be programmed for 2025 and 2026. So just to give you an idea of the development schedule. So staff, we develop recommendations, and we have done that over February and most of March. We do that in consultation with our TxDOT district, and TAC reviews the initial recommendations. They did that on March 3rd. And then we will have a draft available for public comment on April 7th. TAC will receive an update on April 7th, and then the policy board will receive an update on April 21st. And then we'll have a public comment period, and then policy board adoption is set for May 19th. So today, in just a minute, we're gonna, as soon as I finish, today we need you to authorize the NPO staff to begin the public comment process. So if you have the outline, and if you don't have one, I have a couple. Does every member have an outline? All right. So I'm just gonna quickly describe some of the stuff here. I'm just gonna go through it as quickly as possible, and we can answer questions after the meeting. You're obviously you can send questions to any of the NPO staff, comments, anything for the next couple of weeks, and even during the public period. So we're proposing sections. So the section 1, if you're looking at your outline, that section will just be the introduction and background, and it'll be the purpose of the transportation improvement program, the description of project selection process, fiscal constraint, regional performance targets. And then in that section also there'll be a section or a subsection that talks about the progress from the past tip. And so that'll be a snapshot of the work completed in fiscal year 2021, and in which construction began during fiscal year 2021. And that won't be included in the new tip. And you'll see that list right there of projects, significant projects that are underway, group projects that have been completed, and then upcoming work for 2022. So there are, just to note, there are no regionally significant highway projects programmed for construction in fiscal year 2022. We don't have enough banked funds of our projected future allocations to program funds for construction until actually 2026. So, I mean, this could change if funding from the latest infrastructure bill or with TMA designation, and then that would be done by amendment. Then the next section is the group CSJ, or control section job program. And most of you who have been around the NPO for a while understand the group program. It allows TxDOT to group projects so that they have flexibility to use categories of funding allocated to TxDOT or to needs that arise, like acts of nature, crash damage, safety, striping, signal upgrades, things like that. And that's what you know as like category 8, which is safety, or category 1, maintenance funds, bridge funds, category 6. And then with the group project, that funding is fiscally constrained on a statewide basis. So, staff is proposing that we'll include the latest TxDOT group projects chart. I won't go into that. If you have questions, come see me afterwards. But of course, we won't group projects that use category 2U funds, and that's because those projects are metro and urban area corridor funding. Those projects using that funding are selected by the NPO in consultation with TxDOT. So for transparency purposes, we'll list all phases of any projects using 2U funding. Then we'll include a table of group projects in an appendix and maps. So we're proposing, and this is different than we have done in the past TIP, proposing to use a group bicycle and pedestrian projects in the new TIP. There's many benefits in doing that, but primarily it's to keep the transportation alternative funds, which are Cat-9 funds, from lapsing statewide, and it gives project sponsors more time to develop their projects and resolve any issues. So listing in an appendix demonstrates that these types of projects are priority for our region as reflected in our active transportation plan, but listing them in an appendix, a separate appendix, addresses concern for visibility of federal funds that are awarded to our communities for those projects. Section 2 is highway projects. So for the new TIP, the highway section will list priorities from the MTP that Waco, MPO, and the Waco District agree can be ready for implementation. We're supposed to include. So the first subsection will be engineering and right-of-way projects. We have 10 projects in that category, which allows TxDOT to pursue engineering and right-of-way acquisition. Those are listed there. Questions. And then the next subsection is construction projects. So for fiscal year 23 through 25, there's no construction program for these years due to fiscal constraint. But in 2026, we will have enough funds banked to include reconstruction of the Franklin New Road intersection. So that is listed there for fiscal year 2026. Then the next section is public transportation projects. And again, that is for our area right now, it's formula grants. And then section 4 will include the fiscal constraint and financial summary. And then appendix D, you're used to us talking about appendix D, that is where we list all significant projects that are under development, but they don't have a financial commitment yet. Listing these projects in appendix D permits TxDOT to obtain environmental clearance and other federal approvals short of construction within the fiscal constraint limitation. So you see in that section, the first project listed is IH35 4C. So please understand that listing this project here doesn't greenlight the project. That would still require a subsequent TIP amendment prior to construction, and any of the projects that are listed in appendix D would require an amendment prior to construction. So as funds become available in the future, we'll have those discussions. And then you see the rest of the projects that are proposed for appendix D. And then appendix G, you've seen this before. It's the chapter that describes the anticipated effects of the projects that are chosen toward achieving the performance targets. And then we're proposing the appendix H, which is new, and that would be where we list the grouped bicycle pedestrian projects that were currently listed separately in the 2021-2024 TIP. So we're proposing that grouping these for the benefits we discussed earlier, but listing them in this appendix to demonstrate the continued commitment to their implementation. So MPO has been drafting the new fiscal year 2023-2026 TIP over the past few weeks, and we presented initial recommendations to the TAC on March 3rd for their review and comment. The TAC will see a draft of the new TIP on April 7th, and then we hope to begin to get public comment on it beginning on April 8th. And this will give staff enough time to gather public input and time for the policy board members to consider adoption at the May policy board meeting. So, yeah, all right, so just with the other amendments, proposed amendments that you saw, we are going to take these to public comment all at the same time. So the public input process will be April 8th through May 8th. And then we'll have a public meeting on April 12th, two public meetings. And then we'll be looking for technical committee of the TAC to give us a recommendation on May 5th, and we'll have a public hearing May 19th at the policy board the policy board meeting, sorry. So let's go ahead and so because you probably will have questions, we're going to talk briefly about IH35 4C, and then we'll entertain some questions and discussion, and then we'll move to the next thing. So TxDOT Stan or Victor, do you want to just talk a little bit about okay, this is Victor Gable from TxDOT Waco District. And, here. With this.
Good afternoon, everybody. So Annette kind of briefly touched on some of the funding issues that actually funding all things that we're dealing with as far as the infrastructure bill. It passed about 3 months ago, and the next thought as well has been, they've seen the draft application that TPP category funding to be getting. It's not finalized. It won't be finalized until August when the commission approves it. But as far as what we've seen, the draft really well across the categories, especially the normal categories that can be spent within MPO boundaries. And as y'all know, the Waco district of Texas, we serve 2 MPOs. We serve this one, obviously. We also serve the point of the south. Having said that, with these allocations coming, where Texas stands, what we want to do is have projects ready to go and take advantage of these funds when they become available. I don't know if you're showing the proposed funding breakdown.
No, they have it on the,
Okay.
they're looking at what you're looking at.
Okay, so if you see the proposed funding breakdown, it's proposed, this is what we're hoping to go after and try to make work. But we have Waco District using CAP 4 statewide connectivity funds. That's our district discretionary funds that the district gets to determine which projects they can spend on within MPO boundaries. We're proposing to put about $67 million on this I-35 Fort project. And in turn, we expect the Waco MPO to put about $64 million of CAP 2 against this project. And in doing that, we'd be asking the TxDOT Transportation Commission to fund $131 million. It's a big ask. That's a lot of money to ask for the commission to be able to put on there. But in saying that, we're hoping to have this project ready to go. It's no utility relocations except for the joint bid. And the right of way has all been purchased. So if the project is ready to go, we have a 95% set of plans. We could have it out the door really soon. So that being said, we want to touch on that project, have that ready to go for this MPO to hopefully take advantage. But at the same time, we're going to try to have I-14 down south ready to go as well. And so whichever one of those they would choose, or maybe both of them, it's our duty to try to be ready as best we can for both MPOs and have a project ready to go to take advantage of these excess funds, because it's not every day you have a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure bill like that happen. So, having said that, is there any questions as far as what it is? The I-35 4C job, it's basically from Loop 340 to 12th Street. It's about a third of the length of the project that's under construction right now. There's only 5, I believe, intersection overpasses. You have New Road, Valley Mills, and 17th and 18th Street. Timeline would be significantly less than what you're seeing right now. You don't have the distance that you have. You're not going through a university, compressed downtown, or compressed utilities that we're dealing with as well. So, having said that, that's what our plan is, to have it ready to go and hopefully take advantage and get some traction from the Texas Transportation Commission down south.
Estimated time for construction to start would be what you just.
When to start? So the proposal is we're putting it into FY27, which is outside of the tip, is what it is saying. That's the initial point. But like she said, there's a chance we could get a call from administration in Austin saying, hey, this is a perfect project. Could you have it ready to go whenever? Sooner than that. Now that's a good question. I don't know when that would be. The earliest we could have it ready to go would probably be about 12 to 18 months from today.
Victor, about 50% of that coming from the commission, like you said, that is a big ask. Substantially different than some of the other funding schemes we looked at in the past, so I think it's pretty exciting, but has there been any dialogue or is there any indication that that's possible?
It's possible. They are wanting to max out any project cost of 50% of the commission. But if there's any way we could make it less than 50%, that just makes it more.
Jacob, to your question. Outside of the Waco MPO, outside of the Waco district, that section of I-35, and we're not going to talk about Austin itself, is really the only unimproved section of I-35 I-35 from Laredo all the way to Red River. Again, without the exception of downtown Austin, which is a whole other animal. It's on the radar, so to speak, at the commission level, and it has been on the radar ever since I've been away from the radar. So, it was previously supposed to be one big project with the current project. It was cut back because of the funding shortfall. Well, now the funding's coming along, so that's why we have the design so far along. So we feel like we're in a very, good position to move that project, when these funds come available from the commission's point of view.
So, on the August date of the publication, will we get an indication then? Or will it still have to be decided at the commission level?
It'll still have to be decided then. What happens in August, that's when our 10-year UTP plan is officially adopted by the commission. Now, this project will be in the UTP, but it's going to be set in FY 2027. What all the commission does in August is they approve all the funding allocations that come to each MPO, to each district based across the whole 12 categories of funding. So all we'll know in August is the exact amount of cap $2 that the MPO has, cap $4 that we as the district have to use for the next 10 years, cap 1, all the categories will be spelled out. But to actually get this project funded, number one, we've got to get the fund off from administration. Then number two, we're gonna have to come back through the MPO process and have it put into the TIP officially.
And then there's this $6 million incentive.
Yes. So what that is I don't know if y'all noticed what's been going on this 4B job. We put a pretty substantial incentive on it.
That's that one.
And it cut down
The contractor incentive.
right. It makes them want to get in and get out and get it built a lot faster. So we want to set up the same structure, the same A+B, put an incentive on there, a package, and hopefully we can get a contractor that's as good as what we have now or better to come in and do the same type of work.
What does the Valley Hills overpass look like? Is it a complete reconstruction of that?
Everything reconstructed through there. Right, everything. Well, some of the southern portion frontage roads are already permanent frontage roads, what's built out there, especially what's in front of Legends Crossing, Cinemark, I think basically up to New Road is new frontage roads south. So.
Any other questions for Victor? Stan? Thank you very much. Thank you, Stan. All right, so does anyone have any questions about anything other than I-35?
Are we doing our public comments the way we've always done them, or are there new alternative ways for us to reach out to the community stakeholders?
So for this right now, we'll have April through May.
Right.
So we'll have public meetings, 2 public meetings that are scheduled. And then of course, we'll take public comment and through the website, through phone calls, by email, through everything.
Are either one of those meetings geared to be Spanish speaking?
We can have Spanish speaking, absolutely. We always advertise everything in Spanish. And if we need a Spanish speaker, then we will have that.
I think we probably should just prepare to have that as opposed to needing one and then having to adjust. Specific to our demographic, I think that's a change that we need to just make.
That's something that we would also have to address in the UPWP if it costs us
I
something.
hear what you're saying.
So right now,
Yes.
you know, if it's a formal process like that, but right now we have access to planners in the that can speak Spanish, and they can be on standby too. All right, so in order for us to meet the deadlines that we laid out, today we need you to authorize us to begin the public input process. It won't begin until April 8th, but then this board doesn't meet again until April 21st, so we're requesting authorization from you for today. So if anyone is opposed, let us know now.
I'll just comment right quick. I know, first let me follow up on Councilmember Merrifield's comment about bilingual. I think it's imperative that we do that. We can communicate with more people and everybody understands what we're doing. And communication and transparency is important. So yeah, it's whatever we need to do with that. Let's get it. And the second thing I would say is that we're not voting on this I-35 issue here today, as everybody knows, but we're just kind of kicking it around and get it into Appendix D, that would be Appendix D, just on the list of projects. So I think it's important that we do include it. And I know there's some construction fatigue that people talk about, and, but we're getting very close to the finish line. I think we'll hear from Clayton here in a bit on the existing I-35 project. And in the context of the new development that's going on in New Road and the Mall area outside there on Bagby, and the fact that this is the last link to I-35 as Stan mentioned. And I think it's intuitively, we'll probably start competing with I-14 as that thing gets launched too. So, and the construction is a little bit faster, as Judge was kind of alluding to, construction is a little bit faster than it has been. And this is the I-35 existing project is coming in about almost a year earlier than what we thought. So I think as we look at the funding structure, I think put fresh eyes on what this project looks like after the public process is finished and it comes back to us.
Jim, could I say something? You mentioned I-14, that's within the Waco district. There are really three interstates, new interstates that are competing for the same funding pool. I-35 is an existing interstate. I-14 is extension of the existing. That's also competing with I-69, which is in progress, and I-27, which will run from Lubbock all the way to Del Rio. In a priority fashion, I-14 will be competing for that level of funding. That's another reason why this I-35 project, with the funding scenario that we see unfolding right now, puts us in what I think is a good position, because it's a current interstate that needs to be improved as opposed to adding new assets to the state transportation system.
Doesn't 14 have an earmark?
No, it does not. It's mentioned in the whatever they call it, IAJA, as a high priority project. There's no funding attached to it. But Senator Cruz and Senator Warnock from Georgia both.
So that's what would be equal to a earmark today. Because there's no, technically, no earmark.
Technically, well, it's not an earmark because there's no
Right.
funding provided for it.
Yeah.
Even in the.
But it's prioritized.
Right. It's a highly prioritized project or interstate, if you will. It's the only one that is called out in the IAJA. But again, just to bring attention to it. It would be down the road from what we're talking about here on I-35. Which again, to me, adds emphasis why we should try to get this done as soon as we can. But in a bigger competitive world for funding, that means something. TxDOT really hasn't settled on what that language means yet. That's part of the ongoing planning issues in Austin as to what that language actually means for Texas. Because it's multi-state, it goes all the way to Georgia, all the way out west to El Paso. So it's a much bigger deal, much more expensive, but there's no funding allocation.
Thanks, Stan. Any other questions? Great dialogue on this. I appreciate everybody's input. Any other comments? Again, this will be a process over the next few months, and it'll come back to this group. Next item is number 9, review and discussion regarding proposed amendments to Connections 2045, the Waco Metropolitan Transportation Plan, MPT.
Yeah, okay. This is the last of the acronyms for today, I think. And then it's also the last plan amendment that I'm going to talk about. As a reminder, the MTP is our guiding document. It is our 25-year plan. It has all of our regionally significant projects for each mode. If a project includes federal dollars, it must be included in our MTP, and it is fiscally constrained. So the reason we have to do an MTP amendment, well, it's twofold. The first is every time we have a new tip, we have to make sure that it's the MTP and the tip match, that they're consistent. So that's part of the reason. The other reason is as we're going through these FAST Act annual targets, we have to make sure that the next time we update the MTP, it's brought up to speed. So in this case, it would be the transit safety targets. So starting with the transit safety targets, all we're doing here is updating the discussion and adding the targets that the policy board moved to support in this past February. So all we're doing is updating the MTP. It's nothing new. And then some examples of consistency changes that we need to make for the MTP. One thing that we know we have to change is the discussion or the description of Spur 298, that's the Franklin Road project. In the MTP, we have to update the extent from US 84 to New Road, currently says Lake Air to New Road. Update the scope of work because it still talks about a Michigan left, but that has since been updated to be an overpass design. And because of that design change, there's also a change in the cost. So it's increasing from 14 million to 36.4 million. And again, the change is simply because the project has been under development, has been revised, it's about ready to be put in the tip for construction if that gets approved. Therefore, it should be consistent in the MTP. The other change that we know we need to make is we need to remove the I-35 breakout projects. If you recall, when we adopted the last tip, the 21 to 24 tip, we talked about the 2 breakout projects, but it was contingent on being able to kind of dovetail right into the 4B construction. We weren't able to do that because if you recall in January of 21, I think, we had to take those breakout projects, take those out from the tip due to funding constraints. So they no longer make sense. The only reason we were going to do the breakout projects is if they could be in line with the 4B project. So they're moved, let's remove them. Both of them were at a cost of $38 million. There's a chance you might need to make some additional changes. We'll go through and review the MTP once we have the final list of proposed projects for the TIP. But that's the meat of it. Again, this is the same public comment period that we've been talking about, starting on April 8th, going to May 8th, the 2 public informational meetings on April 12th, coming to the TAC for a recommendation on May 5th, and policy board for adoption on May 19th. And then happy to take any questions on this item.
Any questions? Chelsea. Great job, Chelsea. Again, this is, we're not voting on this today, so public comment process will come back before us in May.
Exactly.
All right, thanks, Chelsea. I think that's it. One more discussion item, item number 10, discussion and updates regarding the MPO strategic planning work group.
Chair, if I could invite Rose Thomas to give us an update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was told to be brief today in this presentation, and it's not going to be hard to do because I'm not really sure I understand what we're doing yet. But I don't think I'm alone, all right? Just real quickly and briefly, the committee is made up of 5 members. There were 2 members to represent from MPO, 2 members from TAC, and 1 citizen representative. Citizen representative Lorraine Dupree. The MPO members, policy board members are Chairman Holmes and myself, and then also from the technical advisory committee, Zane Dunham and Amy Highland represent those spots. We did have our first meeting after stumbling out of the gate with trying to pick a date. that we could all meet, but we did have our first meeting on Friday, March 4th. At that meeting, we determined that we're probably going to have 8 bi-weekly meetings between then and June to get to a desired proposal to bring back to the NPO Policy Board. We will be giving you monthly updates. I've been assigned that task, so you'll get to see me again do this. And Zane Dunham is going to be doing the same with the TAC. Few of the areas that we discussed in that first meeting happened to be about developments of 5-year strategic plans, what the TMA designation means, and why there's differences between that and MPO. I think the thing that we most of us got that day in that first meeting was we're going to be somewhat shifting focus, moving into a TMA from basically project-specific items more to context-sensitive items. And those are words I have to have pictures with so that I somewhat understand those better. But basically, I think in a nutshell, what Mukesh is trying to teach us is we're going to be kind of moving from solely looking at transportation and broaden that into mobility issues more in the particular area. We have another meeting tomorrow, and in that meeting, we'll be receiving assistance from the Texas A&M Transportation Institute in terms of development of where we're going. And we also talked about how this particular MPO's regional effect has had an influence on all of its members, and how that potentially, based upon that change from solely transportation to mobility issues, how that regional influence may expand for the whole area. So with that, I'd be happy to defer any questions to Mukesh. Thank you.
Any questions? City Manager Thomas, thank you so much for that brief. And I know that we've got I'm on that committee too. We've got our work cut out for us. I think the end product will be something that kind of summarizes and clarifies, helps us all understand the mission of the MPO. So I'm excited to serve that as well. The next item is the discussion and updates from TxDOT regarding the significant highway construction within the Waco metropolitan area. Clayton, you're on deck. That's good. Yeah.
All right, we'll jump into it. First project here is our Waco Drive ADA project. We have completed the vast majority of the new signal foundations up and down the corridor. Contractor is going to be setting new signal poles over the next several weeks. Has started a lot of the flat work on the east end of the project, working to the west. Once some of the poles are set, you'll see some full closures of intersections to start hanging mast arms for the new signals. And that'll kind of take place through the spring and summer. But we're still on track for a completion end of this calendar year. 185 widening from 317 to FM 938 out in the Crawford area. Contractors working on the shoulder widening right now. This spring, we'll be working on the flex space and then start paving operations and wrap up into this summer. State Highway 31 overpasses. Same contractors on the interstate. Weber is out there. They're making great progress. This week, actually, I believe it's tomorrow, we'll be pouring the eastbound bridge deck of 31, starting with some intersection work on the north side of the intersection. And then later this month, we'll begin the widening operations on 939 between 31 and Happy Swanner Lane. Spring Valley, I wanted to go ahead and put it on here. We have not started work yet, but we've got a pre-construction meeting coming up at the end of this month. Plan to break ground April 18th. Again, this is a widening, adding a turn lane between Sun Valley and Hewitt Drive on Spring Valley, along with some drainage improvements. Again, we're expecting right around a 2.5-year project on that one. State Highway 6 Mall to Mall. 2 primary work areas right now are at the Bagby U-turn bridges and then the new frontage road bridges at the Beverly intersection. At Bagby, we've got beams set this month. Actually, starting next week, we'll have some more closures to pour shear keys in between those beams. And we plan to pour the bridge deck the end of this month. Weber will come in and start concrete pavement on either side of the bridges and potentially have those open up to traffic at the end of April. At Beverly, again, we're working on the new frontage road bridges and retaining walls, and that work will continue through this summer. As far as completion date, we're still on track for that end of 2023. Here's just some pictures of our beam setting operation from a couple of weeks ago. Here you can see all the beams in place, and again, we hope to pour this deck by March 31st. Here's some of the retaining wall that's going up for the new frontage road bridges there at Beverly. And then final project, Interstate. Through February, we're looking right at 85% completion. Just a breakdown of our milestones on this project. Milestone 1 was our southbound main lane construction. We completed it in 381 of an allowable 443 days. Our second milestone is the completion of the northbound main lanes. We're sitting at right around 60% complete there and on track for an on-time finish. And then our substantial completion, we're charged 842 days of an allowable 1,150, and again, still on track for substantial completion late this calendar year. These aerials were taken actually just last week, so it's pretty up to date. You can see here at the south end of the project, we just lack some leave out to tie in our new pavement to existing on the northbound main lanes. Weber's actually brought in a second paving crew to attack some of these smaller areas. So you should start to see some of these leave outs on the frontage roads and intersections and main lanes start to come together over the next couple of months. Here's an overhead shot of the new 11th 12th Street intersection. This is an area that will probably see concrete pavement sometime in April. We should see that intersection opened up first part of the summer. Here's just another shot looking back to the south, seeing that new intersection configuration. Looking to the north, you can see where concrete pavement operations have started between 11th, 12th, and 4th and 5th. Here's directly overhead at 4th, 5th. So again, this is another intersection that's going to change pretty dramatically when we're done. You can see on the left side of the page there what will be the new 5th Street alignment. That concrete pavement's been placed between the frontage roads. On the right-hand side of the page, you can see the 4th Street concrete pavement that's been put in place. We anticipate reopening that connection between the frontage roads first part of April. Looking to the north again, you can see where concrete pavement operations have started for the northbound main lanes. On the northbound frontage road, you can see some of that leave out work that I had mentioned where Weber has come in and filled some of the gaps, so to speak. And then at University Parks, the intersection work will continue through the spring. And again, another one that late this spring, early summer, you should see opened up in its close to final configuration there.
I'm sorry, this is gonna seem like a dumb question, but that bump right there.
It's going away.
Is that
So
my kids would probably like it.
So it's actually ongoing now. There was an old water line we've tied in on the west side of the interstate. So the old line is
I
dead.
mean, it is massive.
It's coming out. It's coming out. Here directly overhead at the Brazos River, this deck was placed early part of this month. And then to the north, you can see a lot of the concrete pavement that started for the northbound main lanes. Again, just looking to the north, one thing to note here, you can see the new on-ramp from the river to MLK. That ramp is expected to open up late April. When that happens, I'll get to it in another slide, but we'll close the on-ramp closest to Business 77. That'll allow us to tie in concrete pavement there and build the permanent exit to 77. Here's looking back to the south. Again, you can see the ramp I just mentioned at the bottom of the screen and some of the northbound main lane pavement going down. Here's directly overhead at the MLK intersection. You'll see some concrete pavement ongoing for the U-turns there in April. So later this spring, you'll see those U-turns operational. Looking back to the south at the UPRR overpass. Again, a lot of concrete pavement's been placed in this area since our last meeting. Directly overhead Forest Street. Here's looking to the north at Business 77. Since this picture was taken, we've actually started placing concrete pavement on the west side of the intersection and in between the frontage roads. So later this spring, you'll see traffic move to its permanent location as well. Business 77 is actually the last remaining structure on the project to be poured, and that's expected to happen in April.
Like, could you back up one?
Sure.
So for everybody's information, that's the Potts interchange in the upper left of that picture. We've made some adjustments to the current project on 77 and the Potts interchanges. What's listed in this other document we spoke about earlier. And we're out procuring right now. So to help tell us what Potts interchange is going to look like eventually. But make some adjustments to the current project so we can tie whatever we design into Potts interchange in the future. Thanks, Blake.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, same intersection again, just looking to the south. You can see what that intersection is going to look like a little bit. Looking to the north towards 84, again, you can see a lot of the bond breaker that's put down with paving starting up later this spring. Here's a shot of the 84 intersection. And again, since this was taken, we've started some of the westbound pavement work on the east side of the intersection. So they're between Sam's and HEB. So later this spring, we should be able to split traffic there, put them in their final configuration and hopefully help traffic move through that intersection a little better than it does currently. Here, the north end of the project, we actually recently made a traffic shift. So you can see here where traffic is swinging now into the northbound pavement. We've got 2 lanes opened up from roughly the Barron's overpass to the north end of the job. We should in the next 4 to 6 weeks see 3 lanes opened up from this area up through the north end of the job. Again, here's just looking south of Barron's, and again, you can see the traffic switch here on the new northbound pavement. And just a shot looking all the way to the north end of the project. With that, I'll open it up. Any questions about any projects or any locations in particular?
Clayton, at some point, there will be you may have said it on this, new parks, is there the closure on new parks, or the work that happens on new parks is gonna cause a deeper closure at all?
You're talking about the closure on the west side. So there's actually a separate closure that's going to happen on that side that has to do with the utility project that the city has ongoing right now. It's separate from ours, but when that work occurs, we'll be taking care of some of our activities as well.
Okay. Do you know how long y'all expect for that to be closed?
I do not have that duration offhand.
And what's the length of the closure?
I could follow up with Waco Utilities and get back to you on that one.
Well, I mean, I can call them, but if y'all are doing some work too, I'm just trying to be clear about what work
Our work will be from roughly where the 7-Eleven is to the front road in that area. So directly in front of Robinson Tower there.
Okay.
Any other questions of Clayton?
Hadn't we already had a consultant talk to us about Potts interchange?
Well, we had a consultant do a study along the whole Business 77 corridor, so they looked at multiple intersections. Now Potts, was one of the locations they identified as a roundabout, but that was a pretty high level study, so.
Yeah, this is, Victor's got a scope for it.
So, Commissioner, you're talking about state with feasibility, state with MPO. This whole document had multiple intersection stretch along 77, multiple roundabouts. One that we're about to start is actual schematic and environmental condition. We can come up with real design and what we could fit in there, and then eventually move on to design plans, what we call PSC, the project that he wants to run. So right now, it's one of the next ones up with UTP. Great.
Anything else?
Any other comments? Thanks, Clayton. It's always exciting to see those aerials, and now we're like 8 months out from completion of the entire project, which seems there's a lot's happened in the last 3 years, but it does seem like it's flown by in the case of I-35. The mall project, you said by the end of 2023.
Yes, sir.
So that one's not hitting any snags. So two big projects there, building out Central Texas. Great. The next item on the agenda is the director's report, item 12.
Thank you. So our next meeting is on April 21st at the same location. We will again have the update from strategic planning work group. By that point in time, we'll also have elected our TAC officers. And at the next meeting, we also intend to schedule an update from our fixed route realignment study consultants. We already had that, but before we conclude our meeting, there is a very important announcement that I would like to make. At the MPO, we are very short-staffed. We are 3 people at this moment, and so when one of our staff members leaves, it's a really big deal. And so we are about to become roughly 2/3. And so Chelsea, who has been with us for the last 6 years, a little over 6 years, she will be leaving us and going to California to work on some new projects. And so, so before we leave, one of the things that I wanted to mention is that when I came here in November, as it is the case, all of you have experienced it before, that when you begin a new project or a new chapter, the most important thing that matters is the people you're going to be working with. Nothing else matters more than that. And I was really fortunate, even though it has been really short time, but I was really fortunate to have Chelsea and Annette work with me so that I could get oriented not only into the city of Waco, but into this entire new chapter in my life. So I'm quite grateful. I wish that there were more years. So we have something, we have a small presentation for us, for Chelsea. And, so Councilman Holmes, if you,
Chelsea, yeah, thank you. You've been with the group for a while now and helped me and Mukesh and Chris and the whole group and Jacob, all the previous chairs. And I appreciate it. I'm sorry to see you go. You've done such a great job for NPO and you'll always be a friend of NPO even though you're not with us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the service.
What a surprise. Shocked. This has been a really good group to work for. Thank you for being so nice and kind to me and helping me grow professionally. It means a lot.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Okay, was that all of the entire report? Okay, does anyone have an agenda item that they would like to consider for a future meeting? Hearing none. Okay, in the next meeting is the next NPO Policy Board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April 21st at 2 p.m. We'll talk about NPO travel demand model discussion, update and discussion on NPO strategic planning and TxDOT construction update. And at the end of the meeting here at this time, we provide an opportunity for the public to address the NPO Policy Board on any item of NPO business not identified in this agenda. And did we hear from anybody? We did not. There being no speakers, we will entertain adjournment, and no further business. Will adjourn the meeting here at 3:17. Thanks, everybody.